The Hendersons. Ah, the Hendersons. Their roses didn't just win the county prize 5 years straight. They practically were the county prize. Their porch lights, a beacon of suburban order, flickered off at 10 p.m. sharp, without fail. And every Sunday morning, a casserole, perfectly browned, lovingly prepared, found its way to the local food pantry. They were, by all accounts, the epitome of neighborly perfection, a postcard picture couple in a postcard picture town. But beneath that meticulously cultivated facade, something far more sinister was taking root. The very soil that fed those award-winning blooms, the earth beneath their feet, was working overtime in a way no one could have imagined. Because beneath the rich mulch and the Miracle-Gro, tiny, innocent bones were quietly, horrifyingly turning into fertilizer. Charles and Victoria Henderson arrived in Glen in the spring of 2017, a breath of fresh, albeit slightly perfumed, air. Locals still remember the moving truck pulling up to their grand old Victorian, looking less like a logistical nightmare and more like a magazine shoot. Think color-coded boxes, each precisely labeled, and yes, even lavender sachets tucked into the linens. They weren't just moving in, they were staging an entrance. A landscaper, looking a bit bewildered, trailed behind, planting mature boxwoods the very same afternoon. Within 6 months, their Victorian home wasn't just renovated. It sat like a dollhouse, pristine and unnervingly perfect, with fresh shutters, gleaming copper gutters, and a garden that literally stopped traffic. People would slow their cars just to gaze. Victoria, with her effortless charm and impeccable taste, quickly took the reins of the local garden club, turning it into the most exclusive social event in town. She also organized Petunias and Prayers, a weekly Bible study that met on her sun-drenched patio, complete with homemade lemonade and freshly baked goods. Charles, a financial planner with an air of quiet authority, offered free seminars at the library, titles like Plan Like a Pro, Retire Like a Saint, drawing in eager attendees. Neighbors swore they smelled cinnamon sticks wafting from their windows every time the couple opened one, a perpetual aroma of domestic bliss. If you were ever so bold as to ask for a cup of sugar, you wouldn't just get sugar, you'd get organic cane sugar, and a neatly printed scripture card, a little piece of their perfect world to take home.
Perfect, right? That's exactly what everyone thought, what everyone wanted to believe. Until the morning of August 3rd, 2022. That's when their carefully constructed world began to unravel. The first crack in their pristine veneer came from the most mundane of sources, a meter reader. He was just doing his job, parking his truck by the Hendersons' prize-winning hydrangeas, when something caught his eye. A patch of freshly turned earth, oddly shaped like a child's outline, stood out against the manicured lawn. And the flies, they weren't just buzzing, they were busy, a dark cloud congregating over the disturbed soil. A shiver ran down his spine. He called it in at 9:07 a.m., his voice tight with a mixture of unease and disbelief. Officer Dana Kimball arrived first, expecting perhaps a carelessly buried pet, maybe a neighborhood cat. It was a common enough call, sad but usually straightforward. Instead, as she cautiously approached the muddy patch, her eyes fixated on something small, dark, and utterly out of place. A patent leather shoe, tiny, sticking out of the earth. Size 2. Her heart sank. This wasn't a pet. By noon, the Hendersons' immaculate front yard, usually a canvas of vibrant color, had been transformed into a grid of stark yellow tape and numbered flags. Crime scene technicians, moving with a grim, methodical precision, lifted flower bulbs whole, photographing each layer of soil with the meticulous care of archaeologists unearthing ancient artifacts.
The coroner, a seasoned veteran, made his on-scene estimate with a somber shake of his head. Probable homicide. Victim under 10 years old. The neighborhood WhatsApp group, usually buzzing with garden club gossip or lost dog alerts, lit up like a Christmas tree, but with messages of shock and horror. Not the Hendersons, not their land. The disbelief was palpable, a collective gasp echoing through Glen. Detectives, their faces etched with a grim determination, found Charles and Victoria sitting on their porch swing, a tableau of grief. They offered the couple coffee, a small gesture of humanity amidst the unfolding horror. Victoria clutched her worn Bible, her body racked with silent sobs, while Charles, ever the picture of controlled composure, kept clearing his throat, a nervous tic betraying his outward calm. Their statements were identical, delivered with a chilling synchronicity. We don't know anything. News, especially bad news, travels faster than wildfire in a small town. Within hours, word had spread that a migrant strawberry crew had been camping in the woods behind Glen, just beyond the Hendersons' property line. Social media, that insatiable beast, did the rest. By dusk, a makeshift vigilante mob, fueled by fear and misinformation, was combing the creek beds with flashlights and AR-15s, convinced they were hunting down a monster. Police, forced to respond to the public outcry, interviewed 42 workers, each one innocent, each one bewildered. None matched the description, or rather the absence of a description, linked to that tiny shoe. The Hendersons, meanwhile, seemed to float above the chaos, posting yard signs that declared, in elegant script, "Justice for the innocent, pray with us." Their hydrangeas, oblivious to the unfolding tragedy, still bloomed like nothing had ever happened, a defiant splash of color in a world suddenly gone gray. It was a masterful performance, a calculated deflection that, for a time, actually worked. While the town chased ghosts in the woods, the real work was happening quietly, meticulously, inside the state lab. Dr. Navarro, a forensic anthropologist with a reputation for unwavering focus, gently rinsed soil from the delicate remains. The child, she determined, was female, approximately 6 years old, with no dental fillings, a detail that might seem minor but spoke volumes about her background. The cause of death? Blunt force trauma. A brutal, senseless end. But it was a peculiar finding, something clinging stubbornly to the bones that truly piqued Dr. Navarro's interest. Pulverized oyster shell. Now, oyster shell isn't just any garden amendment. It's an expensive one, a niche product favored by serious gardeners for its calcium benefits and soil conditioning properties. In Glen, only one specialty store within a 50-mile radius carried it. And here's the kicker. You needed a rewards card to buy it. Guess whose phone number auto-filled the database when the store manager checked their records? Charles Henderson, frequent buyer, bulk discount customer. The perfect facade was beginning to show a crack, not just in the garden, but in the carefully constructed narrative of their lives. The shell, meant to nurture life, was now a silent, damning witness to death. With the oyster shell discovery providing the crucial probable cause, detectives executed a search warrant at the Henderson home at dawn.
The air was thick with tension, as officers, no longer treating them as grieving neighbors, systemically moved through the immaculate property. They seized potting benches, meticulously organized receipts, and perhaps most damningly, Victoria's handwritten crop rotation journal. This wasn't just a gardening log, it was a diary of their dark secrets. In the margin of an entry dated April 12th, a chilling notation jumped out. Planted new bulbs, deep, 24 inches. That's twice the depth daffodils typically need, an unnatural burial for a plant. It hinted at something far more sinister than horticulture. Then, in the attic, tucked away in a dusty corner, investigators discovered a plain cardboard box, simply labeled Claire, Keep. Inside, the contents sent a collective chill through the team. A pink backpack, adorned with glittery unicorns, a birth certificate for Claire Burley, age 6, and a flyer advertising free piano lessons. At the bottom of the flyer, scribbled almost as an afterthought, was a phone number. Charles' phone number. Claire wasn't just a victim. She was a specific, named child, and the Hendersons knew her. The perfect couple's carefully curated world was crumbling, revealing the horror beneath. If you're finding this case stranger by the minute, tap subscribe so you don't miss part 2. Believe me, the interrogation tapes are wild. You won't want to miss what happens next. Detectives, now armed with irrefutable evidence, split the couple, isolating them in separate interrogation rooms. Charles went first. He was charming, almost unnervingly so. He offered the officers coffee, praised their thoroughness, and even quipped, "I've seen every episode of Forensic Files, you know." When confronted with the oyster shell receipt, a direct link to the burial site, he simply shrugged, a picture of nonchalance. "We garden heavy," he explained, a slight smile playing on his lips. "People notice the results." He maintained his composure, his practice calm almost impenetrable. Victoria's interview was a stark contrast, quieter but no less disturbing. She quoted Corinthians, her voice soft but steady, stroking the cold metal table like it was a beloved cat. Her questions weren't about Claire or the crimes, but about the mundane. She earnestly asked if hydrangeas would survive the coming frost. Neither of them, not Charles nor Victoria, asked for a lawyer. And perhaps most chillingly, neither of them at any point asked about Claire Burley, not her well-being, not her whereabouts, not even a feigned concern. It was as if she never existed. While the Hendersons sat in their separate rooms weaving their carefully constructed denials, cadaver dogs, brought in for a more extensive search, hit on a second location. Not in the garden this time, but under the koi pond, a serene feature of their backyard paradise. The initial discovery had been horrific enough, but the thought of another victim sent a fresh wave of dread through the investigators. Digging revealed a small skull fragment belonging to a child roughly 4 years old. Soil analysis dated this burial approximately 18 months prior to Claire's, suggesting a pattern, a dark history. And yes, the oyster shell was present again. The same amendment, from the same bulk bag, almost certainly. The pond water, neighbors recalled, had been recently drained. Charles had told them he was winterizing the liner, a perfectly plausible explanation at the time. Now, it was a chilling cover-up for a second, unspeakable act. The truth, as it often does, found a way out. Someone in records, unable to stomach the horror, leaked the findings to the press. By nightfall, the Henderson home, once a symbol of perfection, was ringed by angry protesters, their chants echoing through the quiet streets of Maple Glen. Victoria, ever the performer, stepped onto the porch, clutching her Bible, her voice shaking but undeniably steady as she began to read Psalm 27, a defiant act of perceived innocence. A reporter, shouting above the din, yelled, "Where are the parents?" Charles, his face a mask of controlled fury, simply closed the door, shutting out the world. Inside, the detectives were already re-watching Victoria's Garden Club presentation from YouTube, a seemingly innocuous video from months prior. At the 1834 mark, Victoria, with a perfectly charming laugh, joked, "Plants are easier than children, they stay where you put them." The room went quiet. The casual quip, once dismissed as harmless wit, now hung in the air, heavy with a terrifying, chilling new meaning. It was a window into their twisted reality. The evidence was mounting, piece by agonizing piece. Forensics matched fibers found on Claire's pink backpack to a specific roll of landscaping burlap, the kind sold to Charles Henderson at the local hardware store. It was a tangible link, undeniable. But more importantly, a discarded coffee cup from Charles's interrogation room yielded DNA. And that DNA, when run against the national database, matched familial markers found on Claire's toothbrush. Her frantic parents, who had driven from 2 states away after recognizing their daughter on a news report, had provided it, desperate for answers. The Hendersons' web of lies had finally snapped. The prosecutor wasted no time, filing double homicide charges. Bail was denied. The perfect couple, the pillar of the community, was now officially charged with the murders of 2 innocent children. As the legal process began, fraud examiners dug through Charles's meticulously organized spreadsheets, the same ones he used to advise his clients to plan like a pro. What they uncovered was a horrifying pattern. The Hendersons' ostensibly benevolent charity, Green Angels, received monthly donations, significant sums, all earmarked for inner-city youth horticulture therapy. Bank statements showed a staggering $340,000 moved over 4 years. Yet, no program had ever launched. No inner-city youth had ever touched a trowel under the Green Angels banner. Detectives theorized a motive as cold and calculated as the couple themselves. The Hendersons, it seemed, needed foster kids, vulnerable children, as props for photo ops to legitimize their fraudulent charity and keep the donations flowing. When questions inevitably started to surface, when the temporary projects became inconvenient, they simply disposed of them. The garden, their pride and joy, became both a meticulously hidden graveyard and a perfect alibi. After all, who questions a bit of dirt under the fingernails when you're hosting a community mulch day? The horror wasn't just in the act, but in the chilling, transactional nature of their crimes.
The trial was, as you can imagine, a media sensation. The prosecution's opening statement was stark, simple, and utterly devastating. They used innocence as fertilizer. Jurors were presented with an overwhelming tapestry of evidence: receipts for oyster shell, detailed soil maps of the Henderson property, and Victoria's chillingly precise crop rotation journal. The defense, scrambling for any viable strategy, first tried to blame undocumented laborers, a desperate reach. When autopsies definitively revealed live births, they pivoted to the equally desperate and ultimately unbelievable claim of improper burial of stillborns. Throughout the proceedings, Victoria sat almost catatonic, rocking gently and whispering to herself, a picture of fragile sanity. Charles, ever the financial planner, took copious notes, as if he were attending another one of his own seminars, his face betraying no emotion. Closing arguments stretched over 2 agonizing days, each side battling for the jury's hearts and minds. But the jury, it turned out, needed very little convincing. Deliberations took a mere 4 hours. The verdict, when it came, was swift and unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Mandatory life without parole. Justice, in its grim and unwavering form, had finally arrived for Claire and the other unnamed child.
The Henderson house, once a beacon of suburban perfection, is gone. Auctioned off for victim restitution, its pristine facade dismantled, its manicured grounds stripped of their dark history. The land, transformed, became a memorial garden, lovingly maintained by volunteers who, in a silent act of remembrance, refused to plant anything deeper than 6 inches. Claire's parents, their faces etched with a grief that time can never fully erase, visit every spring. They bring daffodils, a symbol of hope and rebirth, never roses. Charles and Victoria now reside in separate prisons, their perfect partnership shattered, neither reportedly calling the other. Charles, ever the pragmatist, reportedly tutors inmates in financial literacy, perhaps still planning for a future he'll never see. Victoria, on the other hand, leads a Bible group, finding solace in Scripture, and tends a small plastic pot of mint on her windowsill. It's perfect, green, and meticulously cared for. But unlike the sprawling garden where her darkest secrets lay buried, this fragile plant is confined, unable to spread, unable to hide anything.